Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Welcome back to The Blue Dot podcast, where we're launching our first weekly roundup, where we are bringing you all the news you need to know in 10 minutes or less. Let's see if we can do it, Brian.
Well, with this administration, we could fill 10 hours, but hey, I love a challenge, so let's see what happens.
All right, let's do it. I have some great Kentucky updates to start with. First of all, Kentucky has an amazing lineup of candidates stepping up to run for office. We have 6 strong patriots running for Mitch McConnell's open seat in the Senate, and 2 taking on Congressman Massey on the House side, and a full-on flood the zone offensive launched on the local level in the Kentucky House, County Commissioner, and Magistrate position. So if there's an open seat, we want someone running to take it.
Yeah, that's right. And we are giving them all a platform on this podcast and on our website where you can find links to all of their pages and to their Blue Dot podcast interviews as they are conducted.
Yeah, and if you or someone you know wants to run for office, the final day is January 19th to file for that. And if you want to change your registration to Democrat to be able to vote in the primary, you need to do that by December 31st of this year. So those are some dates you want to keep in mind. And I think that all of this is really exciting to see, especially after seeing how Afton Bain grew the Blue Dot in Tennessee and the special election this term.
Yeah, that was fun to watch. And she shrunk the margin won by Trump just 1 year ago from 22% to 9%. One senior Republican House member prior to the race was quoted by Politico as saying, "Republican conference may come unhinged." That's a quote. If the victory was in single digits. Hey, so let's assume a lot of the GOP is really worried right now.
So Democrats could be looking at a huge blue wave in the House if they can just replicate the election successes seen in 2025 so far. And so while I'm excited about all of this, Trump didn't seem so excited about all the news this week as we saw the Nodfather, a.k.a. Don Storleone, dozed off. He dozed off several times, most notably in his cabinet meeting on Tuesday, proving once again that he is definitely not woke. Even after he went around the table receiving his forced praise from his cabinet, he still couldn't seem to keep his eyes open this week, Brian.
Even during the hero worship, huh? Man, that is really saying something there. I mean, that's probably because he was rage posting the entire night before. He posted over 160 times, with most of his noise consisting of the usual grievances and hate bombs. But he was particularly heavy on the conspiracy theories this time because nothing says presidential like an old man yelling on Truth Social.
Seriously, it probably would have been better if they just let Grandpa sleep. Because when he did wake up, he babbled on about how the concept of affordability was a Democrat hoax and con job.
Another Democrat hoax? You mean like the Epstein files?
Yes. Everything's a Democrat hoax, Brian. And, the funny thing is we see people trying to pay bills, keep food on the table. And this is Americans' number one concern right now. And Trump basically called us all idiots by saying that what we're experiencing isn't real. And to be fair, I think Biden tried to do this, albeit on a different level, but it was still the same mistake. I mean, people are feeling what we're feeling. So I think that was a big mistake. And I think people are really upset at that. I mean, rightfully so. Additionally, in that cabinet meeting, I'm not sure if he was awake to see the Department of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth throw Admiral Mitch Bradley under the bus for giving the order to extrajudiciously execute survivors from the first attack on an alleged drug boat off the coast of Venezuela.
Yeah, passing the buck is a hallmark of Trump and his administration. When confronted with the double tap, as they call it, attack that killed the 2 survivors, Trump immediately pointed to Hegseth, who then pointed the finger at the admiral. And then Pete changed his story 3 or 4 times and landed on, this is all a hoax. And it's just a consequence of war, yet another hoax. But the small boat attacks off the coast of Venezuela are especially dark and dangerous example.
Yeah, and it's really hard to justify that this is about a war on drugs. I'm assuming specifically about cocaine because that is what these boats are allegedly carrying. It's not fentanyl. But it's especially hard to justify while the same week Trump pardoned former Honduran President Orlando Hernandez, who was sentenced to 45 years in prison on drug trafficking and weapons charges. And guys like Hernandez are like the kingpins of all of this illicit drug trade, and whose capture can really, really make a big dent in the flow of drugs coming into the United States.
Yeah, Hernandez was convicted for not only bringing 360 tons of cocaine into the U.S., but also for running a violent state-sponsored drug trafficking conspiracy. Senior officials in the Trump administration have clearly stated that the boat attacks are part of its war against the Caribbean and South American drug cartels. But then Trump pardons Hernandez? How does that fit into this alleged drug war? Well, it really doesn't. That's right. Because wait for it, we now discover that Hernandez also has connections to Silicon Valley billionaires Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, and Sam Altman through a for-profit city being built off the coast of Honduras called Prospera. It's a long, complicated story, but the cryptocurrency Bitcoin plays a major role. Gee, could Trump have pardoned Hernandez because of the influence of these crypto tech bros, not to mention Trump's own crypto business interests? What do they say, Natalie? Follow the money.
Follow the money. And his net worth has exploded $3 billion just this term on this crypto stuff. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And then when they asked about this on Air Force One, Trump was like, well, I don't know who you're talking about. Well, who is this Hernandez guy? And then he said, oh, no. That was a Biden setup. I
Biden.
don't know. Are people really believing this anymore?
Wait, it isn't a hoax? You didn't say it was a hoax?
You get a hoax, and you get a hoax. Everybody gets a hoax. Meanwhile, the family of a Colombian fisherman who died in the U.S. military boat strike in September has filed a formal complaint with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, alleging the U.S. government illegally killed him and that he was not associated with drug running. So we're going to have to see how this one plays out. But the crazy continued this week when Trump waved his imaginary wand of power to say that he hereby voids all documents, proclamations, executive orders, memorandums, and or contracts signed by Biden citing the auto pen use, which is fun.
Yeah, there are a few problems with this. The first is that his magic wand doesn't have that power. The auto pen has been around since Jefferson, albeit different technology. But additionally, the Constitution grants presidents sweeping and near absolute authority. Once issued, a pardon cannot be revoked by Congress, the courts, or a future president.
Yeah, and President George W. Bush already had the Department of Justice look at this. So they looked into the auto pen's constitutionality, and the result was a 29-page report saying that, yeah, this is legal. So all of this is just really a silly distraction as usual.
Yeah, and Trump stayed in fantasy land this week by renaming the United States Institute of Peace, USIP building, the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, spending taxpayer money to put his name all over the former peace building. The USIP was dismantled by the Trump administration earlier this year, with all the staff in D.C. being fired. But because Trump wants to be seen as a peacemaker, he has now claimed the building and the mission as his own. Well, hang on. That is while simultaneously committing war crimes in the Caribbean and Pacific waters with boat attacks and threatening to invade Venezuela because, wait for it, another opportunity to follow the money. Trump has openly stated he and his gas and oil oligarch buddies want to take over Venezuela's oil reserves.
Yeah, he seems to have really learned a lot from his buddy Vladimir Putin in terms of how to invade sovereign countries, But just like that U.S. IP building, Trump did something similar with the national parks. And I'm a national park geek. I love the parks.
Same.
Yeah, and so he's quadrupling the national park's annual pass price to non-citizens, which is really silly because the national parks bring in billions of dollars in tourist revenue. But instead of, the usual picture of a bald eagle or a gorgeous scenic view on the national park's plaque, he plastered his mugshot on it. Well, I feel like he's a dog that just feels like he has to pee on every tree. You don't have to pee on every tree to mark your territory, Donald. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, except it's our territory, okay, not his. And it's our job to do everything we can to make sure he recognizes that. But hey, back to reality where the rule of law is a thing. A federal judge on Tuesday blocked the Trump administration from enforcing a provision of the Republicans' signature tax and domestic policy bill that would deprive Planned Parenthood and local affiliates that perform abortions of Medicaid funding in 22 states.
Yes, thankfully the courts are working well in that instance, but not to be outdone in upholding their fake pro-life stances. The Trump administration stated they would halt federal payments that help administer the food stamp program to Democratic-led states next week if they don't turn over recipient data, because nothing says family values like taking away kids' lunches.
Well, let's bring it back to Kentucky for a minute, okay? The good
Right.
news, we've got a strong Democratic governor fighting back. Governor Beshear is taking Trump to court again, joining 19 states and D.C. to challenge the administration's move to slash the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, support, a change that could leave hundreds of Kentuckians homeless.
And that policy, or the proposed policy, would gut over $15 million in housing funding, putting 700 households and 1,200 families and veterans at risk. And what it does is it caps funding for permanent supportive housing at 30%, forcing states to repay money Congress already approved. And for Kentucky, that means losing 70% of critical housing dollars across 118 counties, plus another $20 million in rental assistance. And here's the kicker: none of this was approved by Congress, and it's a direct reversal of previous guidance. And that this is a really big deal. And I just don't think it's getting a lot of press.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I had not really was aware of this. It's really something that people need to pay attention to. And in other news, a month from today, 100,000 Kentuckians will see their health insurance premiums spike, and we will have the Republicans to thank for that. Interesting timing, as RFK's advisors will be voting on sweeping changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, where they want to end vaccinating all newborns for hepatitis B. The birth dose has been credited for a 99% drop in infections in children and teens since the 1991 recommendation from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics.
And this comes on the heels of the third child death in Kentucky to whooping cough, which would have been prevented if the child were vaccinated. So this is just incredibly sad.
Yeah, good thing we'll be tackling healthcare on our next full podcast airing next week, where we will be joined by Dr. Chris Bulling to discuss everything from MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, to vaccine hesitancy affordability.
And I can't wait for that. And Brian, I think we were just a little over 10 minutes today.
A little bit.
And that's your Blue Dot Weekly Roundup, where the news is fast and the facts are free. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, and never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.